I tell you what, sometimes we get stories on this show that come out of left field and things just connect up and you go, wow. I was talking to a listener about the chances of a government doing something, and I said their chances were about equal to finding Harold Holt. Well, you wouldn't want to know it. A listener in Brisbane, Paul Spottiswoode, who for 20 years was a pilot with Ansett, heard that, and he rang in and he told me that on the day of Harold Holt's disappearance, he's a pilot, the day of his disappearance, he's in the area and they get a call to take to the skies to see if they can find someone who's gone missing. It was Harold Holt. And as a result of that conversation, I want to tell in particular my listeners in Brisbane, but my listeners all around Australia, a remarkable story. Hello, Paul. Isn't it mad how this whole caper works, eh?
It was quite amazing. In fact, I was the next speaker to come on to you.
Yeah.
You gave that throwaway line, and I said, wow. I was tired on the Western Port on Mornington Peninsula, and we heard that a diver was missing, and we jumped in an aeroplane and went looking, not knowing who it was, on December the 17th, 1967.
And what was the weather like? Must have been very difficult, given what we heard about the seas. They were really rough. So I don't know if needle in a haystack is the best descriptor, but it must have been, well, it was obviously impossible.
Well, it was a little bit bumpy just flying across the peninsula that way. And then when we got to the beach, we went up and down. Another aircraft joined us, and we did a circle around, following each other down along the beach, looking in very rough water. You couldn't see anything in the water. We did it for 40 minutes without any result. Flew back to Tyre, landed there, and then they said, you were looking for the Prime Minister, Harold Holt. And we said, wow, that's something.
It is something. Now, very importantly, tomorrow, and again, this is a result of Paul's call the other day, there is a remarkable anniversary, and Paul, you call it the anniversary of Australia's greatest aviation mystery. And again, unbeknownst to me, you have such extraordinary knowledge of what happened to Frederick Valentich, who went missing October 21, 1978, in a plane you once flew. Is that right?
Well, the amazing thing was Bill Val, when we went looking for Harold Holt, Bill Val was the pilot and he owned the Cessna. The next year in 68, he traded that Cessna in on a brand new, beautiful Cessna 182L VH, which is the Australian designation for aircraft, DSJ, Delta Sierra Juliet. And I got endorsed on that airplane when I was 20 with 150 hours. And then we fast forward 10 years, and Frederick Valentich, 20 years of age with 150 hours as the young pilot flying that aircraft, the very same aircraft that Bill Val bought.
Wow. So tell me what happened that day. This is October 21, 1978.
Well, he was leaving Moorabbin. He was waiting for his girlfriend, Rhonda Rushton. She was only 16. She was going on the flight with him. She was held up at a chemist shop. Someone didn't turn up for work and they wanted her to stay back. No mobile phones, no phone number. He waited for her and finally left at 19 minutes past 6 in the evening, and flew from Moorabbin across the bay down to the Heads, and then from there, that was 41 minutes to Cape Otway, and then 28 minutes, 64 miles down to King Island. And so he reported at 7 o'clock to Steve Roby, the Melbourne Flight Service Unit operator, who was also a pilot and an instructor, so he knew both sides of the whole thing. And at 6 minutes after leaving Cape Otway, it was the most astounding radio transmissions from DSJ, Frederick Valentich, to Melbourne. And the first one was, Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet, is there any known traffic below 5,000? Steve Roby replied, Delta Sierra Juliet, no known traffic. And he goes on, Delta Sierra Juliet seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000. Now, this transmission goes on for 5 minutes and 50 seconds, but I'll go down to the end where he finally sends to Steve, Delta Sierra Juliet, The engine is rough idling. I've got it set at 23, 24, and the thing is coughing. Well, that's 23 inches of manifold pressure, 2,400 revs. And Delta Sierra Juliet, Roger, what are your intentions? Delta Sierra Juliet, my intentions are to go to King Island. That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me, open microphone for 2 seconds. It's hovering and it's not an aircraft. Followed by at 12 minutes and 28 seconds past 7, an open microphone for 17 seconds with a strange metallic sound.
Oh.
The aircraft was carrying life jackets, an electronic crash beacon, so if you crash, the thing goes off.
Yeah.
Still had 4 hours of fuel on board. And despite a very large search over 4 to 5 days in perfect search and flying conditions, nothing, not even an oil slick, not even a map, not even a life jacket. And he's about 30 miles from Cape Otway on the way, about halfway to King Island.
Oh, my goodness me. Now, let me ask you something, and there is some mention of him having a passing interest in UFOs. Now, I don't know if that's folklore or accurate. What have you been able to determine?
I've spoken to Rhonda Rushton, his then 16-year-old girlfriend. She's now 61, and she's going to be with me tomorrow. And he was rumoured to have had a scrapbook that he kept clippings. She said she never saw it. He never talked about it. And I said, well, if anyone would have known about it, you would have.
Yeah. In your mind, given your experience, is there any obvious explanation? I guess if there was, you might have been forthcoming about that before now. I know that there have been people overseas have a look at this, but in your mind, Paul, what's the best explanation if there is one?
Well, there isn't, Luke. That's why I tend to call this Australia's greatest aviation mystery, even comparing that to, say, the loss of Kingsford Smith. A wheel of that aeroplane floated up on a beach on an island off Burma, and it's now in the Sydney Powerhouse Museum, so they've identified that he went into the drink. Amelia Earhart got very close to Howland Island, but because of a screw-up on time and radio calls on different times, that brought around the use of the Greenwich Mean Time, so it's the same time everywhere. And she was lost, but she got very close to the island, but went into the drink there. Malaysian 370, a flapper-on, floated up on Reunion Island, so we know that that's in the water as well. But nothing has ever been found of DSJ, no body, no fuel, no oil, no life jackets, and this is only halfway, 30 miles from Cape Otway heading to King Island.
Wow. Now, listen, tomorrow, my listeners in Brisbane, this is almost compulsory. If that doesn't intrigue you, I don't know what does. The remarkable Australian story, it's actually a presentation by Paul Spottiswoode, who's been my guest this morning. It's tomorrow from 2 until 4:30 p.m. at the Relaxation Centre of Queensland, which is on South Pine Road at Alderley. There's a phone number. And look, I'm going to put all that information next to the podcast of this chat with Paul. It's $12, which is fantastic value. But if you just want to sit there and hear from not just Paul, but Valentich's girlfriend will be there in the room as well. And can I just say to my media colleagues in Brisbane, what the hell? This comes from a talkback caller. This should be all over the joint. It's an unbelievable story. And Paul, you're an intriguing fella. I mean that in the best possible way, which is, and Paul does all sorts of talks and runs courses. One of those is a course on fear of flying. And if you don't mind, Paul, and I'm putting this on you live and I apologise for that, I'd love to talk to you about that sometime before the year's out, if you'd be interested.
Sure. My pleasure.
Brilliant. It sounds a bit like a life's work. I know you've done so much more in your life, but this has been with you for a long time.
Having flown the very aircraft when it was brand new, a beautiful aeroplane, and we're showing photos on tomorrow, and we've got a lot of information. Rhonda will be telling her incredible story. and sharing it with people over 2.5 hours. There's a lot in it.
Outstanding. Gee, I'm glad you heard that throwaway line about Harold Holt, mate, I have to say.
That was incredible.
Please, listeners, go to the podcast at 2gb.com, 4bc.com.au, particularly my listeners in Brisbane. All the details about the event tomorrow you'll see on the website. And again, Paul, a delight to talk to you, my friend. We'll keep in touch.
Thanks, Luke. Anytime.